Let the record show, senior diplomat Vaxos Par cleared his throat, adjusting his ceremonial robes before the Council's recording crystals, that I, Vaxos Par of the Centauri Diplomatic Corps, am making this testimony of my own free will, and with full awareness that it may be my last official act. The council chambers felt different now. The soaring crystal spires that had once sparkled with hope and unity now cast long, accusatory shadows across the empty seats. Vaxos ran his hand across the smooth obsidian surface of the speaking podium, remembering how many times he'd watched humans stand here, smiling politely through every interruption and dismissal. We called them patient, he continued, his secondary breathing passages wheezing with what might have been a laugh or a sob. No, that's not entirely accurate. We called them pets. Amusing little creatures who had somehow stumbled their way into faster-than-light travel. When they smiled and nodded at our condescension, we mistook their restraint for submission. When they quietly accepted our amendments to their trade agreements, we thought them simple. When they calmly protested our violations of their sovereignty, we saw only weakness. A distant explosion rattled the chamber windows. Vaxos didn't flinch. The defense systems would hold. For now. I remember Ambassador Rodriguez standing right here, he gestured to the podium's worn center. 6 months ago, warning us about pushing too far. She used such fascinating human expressions. The straw that breaks the camel's back. The patience of saints. We laughed, quietly of course. We were much too sophisticated to laugh openly at our pets. Another explosion closer this time. The recording crystals flickered but held steady. The humans had a saying about assumption being the mother of all mistakes. Funny. They tried to warn us about that too. But we assumed their patience was infinite. We assumed their technological advancement matched their diplomatic demeanor. We assumed their military capabilities were as limited as they appeared. Vaxos straightened his spine, all 4 eyes focusing directly on the central recording crystal. To any species who reviews this testimony in the future, learn from our catastrophic error. The humans weren't patient because they were weak. They were patient because they were strong enough to afford patience. They smiled through our insults because they knew exactly what they were capable of. While we congratulated ourselves on our superiority, they watched and waited and built. The chamber's emergency lights flashed red, casting an almost theatrical glow across Vaxos's scaled features. When human children died aboard the Star Dreamer, that legendary patience finally shattered. And now we understand. We understand that what we mistook for the collar of a pet was actually a leash, and we were the ones being held back from a very, very steep fall. A proximity alarm began to wail. Vaxos closed his secondary eyes in resignation, leaving his primary pair fixed on the recording crystal. The following is a complete account of how the Galactic Council learned that patience, true patience, is not a sign of weakness, but a luxury of the powerful. And we were never as powerful as we thought. The decline in relations, Vaxos continued, can be traced to 3 specific incidents. Looking back now, each one feels like watching someone build their own funeral pyre, thinking it was a pleasure cruise. He pulled up the first holorecord, showing the council chambers during the Mining Rights Conference. The Proxima Centauri incident. Council President Xenotol declared human mining claims administratively invalid due to what she called clerical oversights. 4 colonies, 10,000 human miners, all their equipment. Rights stripped away with a single thumbprint. The holo showed Ambassador Kira Rodriguez at the podium, her dark hair streaked with silver, hands clasped calmly behind her back. Honourable Council, her voice rang clear and steady. These colonies have operated legally for 15 years. Our documentation is complete. This appears to be a unilateral decision made without proper... The forms, Xenotol had interrupted, mandibles clicking in what Vaxos now recognized as poorly disguised greed, were filed in human standard dates rather than galactic standard. A tragic oversight. The Moxstarin Mining Consortium has already been granted replacement rights. Rodriguez had simply nodded, typed something into her datapad and said, The Human Federation notes this decision. We trust the Council maintains records of all such administrative adjustments. The second incident, Vaxos shifted uncomfortably, came 3 months later. The Council's Transportation Authority reclassified 6 major trade routes through human space as highly restricted military corridors. No notice, no discussion. 50 years of established trade lanes gone. The Hollow shifted to show the Trade Commissioner, Baxnur, smugly informing the human delegation that their merchant vessels would need to file new flight plans through Moxataran space, at 17 times the previous transport costs. Rodriguez again, somehow maintaining that same composed smile. The Human Federation notes this decision as well, though we wonder if the Council has considered the full implications of. The human delegate will refrain from questioning Council security decisions. Baxnur had snapped. This matter is closed. But the third incident. Vaxos's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. That was when we should have seen it. Really seen it. The Terraform Approval Board denied expansion rights to 3 human colonies suffering from overpopulation. Meanwhile, they fast-tracked approval for Moxataran luxury resorts on 12 worlds bordering human space. The Hollow showed Rodriguez yet again, but this time Vaxos had finally noticed something in her eyes, something that should have terrified them all. The Human Federation, she'd said, that same diplomatic smile fixed in place, notes this decision as well, and we want to ensure the Council's records are absolutely clear on the sequence of events and decisions leading to this point. The human delegate will not make threats, Council President Xenotol had sneered. Threats? Rodriguez's laugh had been like crystal chimes, pleasant and dangerous all at once. I'm simply doing my job, ensuring accurate record-keeping. After all, we wouldn't want any clerical oversights when the time comes to review these decisions. Vaxos paused the Hollow, zooming in on Rodriguez's face. Look at her eyes. Really look. That's not submission in those eyes. That's not patience. That's a predator, counting heartbeats until the strike. He waved the Hollow away, his scales rippling with embarrassment. But we didn't see it. The Moxataran representatives actually laughed, called her the well-trained human right to her face, and she just smiled that smile and kept taking notes. We thought we were watching a species too weak to stand up for itself, Vaxos admitted. Instead, we were watching a species giving us every possible chance to step back from the edge. Ambassador Rodriguez wasn't taking notes for some useless human archive. She was documenting, building a case, creating what humans call a paper trail of our own stupidity. Another explosion rocked the chambers. Closer now. 3 incidents, 3 chances to recognize what we were really dealing with, but we were too busy congratulating ourselves on our clever manipulation of the simple humans, too busy patting ourselves on the back while they smiled and took notes. Vaxos touched the podium again, right where Rodriguez had always placed her right hand. The truly remarkable thing? They gave us even more chances after this. So many chances to pull back, to reconsider. The humans have a saying about having the patience of a saint. We should have asked ourselves, what kind of strength does it take to maintain that sort of patience? And what happens when it finally runs out? The Star Dreamer, Vaxos's voice cracked on the name. That's what broke it. That's what finally shattered the glass. His hands shook as he pulled up the last peaceful moment the galaxy would ever know. The research vessel Star Dreamer, hanging in space like a silver needle against black velvet. The Moxataran patrol ships approaching, the transmission logs. Moxataran Patrol, this is Star Dreamer. We're a civilian research vessel studying quantum field. The human captain's voice, professional and calm. You are in restricted space. Power down and prepare for inspection. There must be a mistake. We're well within the approved research corridor. We have children aboard, conducting their first deep space. The weapons fire cut off the transmission. Vaxos let the silence hang. 27 humans aboard, 8 of them children, part of what they called their Young Explorers program, all lost. And we... We sat in these chambers and called it an unfortunate incident arising from navigational error. The hollow shifted to Commander Blake Chen's entrance to the council chamber. Not through the doors, no, through the wall. The explosion had caught everyone by surprise, except perhaps Ambassador Rodriguez, who hadn't even flinched. "You're out of order," Council President Xenotol had shrieked. "Guards!" Chen had walked straight to the podium, his dress uniform immaculate despite the debris. The guards hadn't dared approach. Something in his eyes, perhaps, or the way he moved, like a caged storm given human form. "Play the footage," he'd said quietly. No preamble, no diplomatic niceties. "You will leave this chamber immediately," Xenotol began. "Play the footage." And they had. Because that tone, that moment, it stripped away millions of years of civilization and spoke to something older, something that remembered what it meant to be prey. The security feed from the Star Dreamer's recreation deck filled the chamber. Children floating in zero gravity, laughing as they conducted their first space experiments, making notes about crystal formation in microgravity, trading jokes about space food, young voices singing what they called an old space song about a Major Tom. Then the first impact, the lights failing, the terror. These children, Chen's voice could have frozen suns, were writing thank you notes to the Council for allowing their research trip. They were thanking you, while your patrol ships were powering up weapons. He'd pulled out a paper note, an actual handwritten one. "This is from Amy Chen, my daughter, age 12. Her last words, written as your ships approached, were, 'Thank you for letting us see the stars.'" The silence in the chamber had weight, mass, gravity. "You called this an unfortunate incident," Chen continued, each word falling like an asteroid impact. "Said they shouldn't have been there. Said the deaths were regrettable, but ultimately their own fault for being in restricted space." He'd placed Amy's note on the podium with devastating gentleness. "Let me be clear, crystal clear. This note, these children, they were the last of humanity's patience, the final line. You've spent years treating our diplomacy as weakness, our restraint as fear, our patience as submission. That ends today." The hollow showed Rodriguez standing, walking to Chen's side, her eternal diplomatic smile finally gone. "The Human Federation doesn't just note this incident," she'd said, and the room had actually flinched at her tone. "The Human Federation remembers." The recording of that session went viral across the galaxy. 100 species watched humanity's patience finally run dry. 100 species realized all at once that they'd never actually seen humanity angry before. "We should have remembered Earth's oceans," Vaxos muttered to the recording crystal. "They're deepest predators. They're the ones that never need to hurry, never need to snap at every target, never need to prove themselves. They can afford patience because nothing hunts them, nothing threatens them, nothing challenges them." He checked the emergency displays. The human fleet was closer now. "We thought we were watching sheep learn to walk among wolves. Instead, we were watching dragons pretend to be sheep, right up until we threatened their young. When the human ships began moving," Vaxos continued, watching another explosion bloom against the orbital shields, "the Council actually laughed, called it a tantrum, posturing. Councillor Naztul said, and I quote, 'Let them burn fuel showing us their outdated ships. Perhaps it will help them work through their emotional outburst.'" The holofeed showed the initial report, 300 human vessels moving in perfect formation. Old ships, familiar designs, nothing that worried the Council's military advisors. Then Admiral Maya Patel's transmission had hit every frequency, every channel, every communication device in Council space. Her face, bronze skin set off by her stark white uniform, filled every screen in the Council chamber. "This is Fleet Admiral Maya Patel of the Human Federation Navy. For 50 years, we've maintained what we call the Paperclip Protocol. Named after an old Earth saying, 'Show your enemies a paperclip. Keep the nuclear weapons at home.' She'd paused, letting that sink in. Every ship you've seen until today, deliberately outdated, every weapon we've shown, intentionally basic, every technology we've shared, carefully selected to seem primitive. The council chamber had erupted in disbelief, but Patel's voice cut through the chaos like a plasma torch through butter. The Star Dreamer carried children, our children. They died writing thank you notes to their killers. We're done playing pretend now. That's when the outdated human ships had changed. Vaxos still struggled to describe it properly. They'd seemed to shiver like heat waves over desert sand, and suddenly they were different vessels entirely. Larger, sleeker, bristling with weapons technologies that weren't supposed to exist. The quantum shell disruption, Vaxos whispered to the recording crystal. That's what broke Naztul. Watching 300 supposedly primitive ships shed their camouflage like snakes shedding skin. But it wasn't just the ships. It was what they did next. The holo showed the Moxitaran defense fleet, pride of the council forces, moving to intercept. 10,000 ships against 300. The council chamber had relaxed, convinced of victory through numbers alone. Admiral Patel's voice had come again. This demonstration will now show 3 new technologies. Pay attention, there won't be a second showing. The first human ship fired something. Not plasma, not laser, not any weapon type the council recognized. Space itself seemed to hiccup. 20 Moxtaran ships simply stopped existing, their atoms gently encouraged to take a brief vacation from reality. Localized space-time incursion weapons, Vaxos recited from memory. They'd had them for decades, never showed them, never even hinted. The second demonstration had involved what Patel casually called gravity sculpting. 3 human ships had created a gravitational lens that turned an entire wing of the Moxtaran fleet into what humans called modern art. Ships twisted into impossible shapes, their crews mercifully killed instantly by the gravitational shear. But the third demonstration, that's when Councillor Naztul had finally understood, had finally seen the truth that Ambassador Rodriguez and Commander Chen had been trying to tell them. The humans had a way to shut down quantum fields, Vaxos said, his scales rippling at the memory. Not just drive fields or shields. They could selectively shut down the quantum coherence that makes matter matter. The holo showed the final demonstration. A single human ship, turning 60 Moxtaran vessels into cold, dissociated atomic soup, not with a bang, not with a flash, just a gentle suggestion to the universe that these particular collections of atoms might be happier going their separate ways. Naztul had stood then, his ceremonial robes dark with stress sweat. "Stop," he'd called out. "Please, stop." Patel's face had reappeared on all screens. "Oh, now you say please. Now you remember courtesy. Let me share something else we've been hiding. We have 30,000 more ships just like these. We've had them for decades, waiting, watching, hoping we'd never need them." The council chamber had gone deadly quiet. "For 50 years, Patel continued, we smiled and nodded and played the part of the primitive but eager species. We watched you strip away our rights, dismiss our claims, mock our diplomats. We did this because we believed, truly believed, that peaceful coexistence was worth swallowing our pride, worth practicing patience." Another Moxtaran squadron had tried to flank the human fleet. They'd vanished so quickly it had looked like a video skip. But you killed children. You killed them while they were thanking you, while they were looking up at your stars with wonder and hope. So now you get to see what humanity looks like when we stop being patient, when we stop playing nice, when we stop pretending to be less than we are. Naztul had moved to the center of the chamber. The council acknowledges its errors. We will make reparations, full restoration of all mining rights, trade routes. Oh, we're well past that now. Patel's smile had been eerily reminiscent of Rodriguez's diplomatic one. Now we're going to have a very detailed discussion about reorganizing the council, about fair representation, about consequences for actions. And you're going to sit quietly and listen, because humanity's patience, humanity's restraint, that was the only thing protecting you from humanity's power. Vaxos turned off the holo, his hands shaking. The actual battle, if you could call it that, lasted 6 minutes. The political restructuring took 6 days, the recovery of the Council's collective dignity, that may take centuries. The defensive screens flickered again. The human fleet was almost here. We thought we were being clever, Vaxos said quietly. Thought we were manipulating a young, naive species. We never asked ourselves why such an apparently primitive species could match us in space travel. Never wondered why they seemed so unworried by our military displays. Never considered that their endless patience might be the luxury of a species so powerful they could afford to wait. The new protocols were educational. Vaxos touched the datapad containing the reformed Council Charter. Humanity didn't demand vengeance. They demanded competence, accountability, transparency. Looking back, that was more terrifying than any revenge could have been. The holofeed showed the first session of the Reformed Council. Ambassador Rodriguez presiding, that diplomatic smile finally bearing teeth. The Mox Terran representatives noticeably absent. Every council session now begins with what humans call a moment of silence for the Star Dreamer's children. A reminder, they say, of the price of arrogance, of the cost of mistaking patience for weakness. He pulled up the new diplomatic guidelines, arguably humanity's most devastating weapon yet. All council decisions must now pass what they call the Star Dreamer test. Will this action protect the innocent? Does this policy serve the many, or merely the privileged few? Would you want this decision recorded in a child's thank you note? The chamber's emergency lights shifted from red to amber. The human fleet holding position, waiting, always waiting. We learned other things about humans too. Apparently they'd been doctoring their historical records, minimizing their victories, emphasizing their setbacks, presenting themselves as lucky survivors rather than skilled conquerors. When we finally saw their true history, Vaxos shuddered. Let's just say their capacity for patience makes much more sense now. A small alert pinged. The Moxtaran delegation had finally been located. They'd fled to the very edge of known space, probably hoping to escape humanity's reach. They'd found human ships waiting there. Ships that had been quietly stationed for decades, just watching, just in case. The humans have a saying, Vaxos continued, something about true power being the ability to destroy your enemy, but true civilization being the choice not to. They'd chosen, again and again, to be civilized, to be patient, to give us every chance to grow beyond our pettiness. He straightened his robes one final time. The Council survives, but changed. Humanity holds no official power beyond their fair share, but their ships remain. Watching, their diplomats still smile those patient smiles. Their technology still largely remains a mystery, though now we know that's by choice rather than limitation. The defensive screens finally failed. Through the chamber's crystal walls, Vaxos could see the human fleet taking up position. Beautiful, terrible, patient. Representatives of future species who may join our galactic community, hear these words well. When you meet humanity, you will see kindness. You will see patience. You will see a willingness to listen, to compromise, to bend. But never, never forget what lies behind that patience. A transmission cut through all frequencies. Admiral Patel's voice still as calm as ever. Councillor Vaxos Par, this is your final evacuation notice. You have 10 minutes to complete your testimony and reach the designated safe zone. We would regret having to postpone the council chamber's scheduled demolition. Vaxos laughed softly. Even now, preparing to destroy the very symbol of our former arrogance, they give us time, give us warning, give us a chance to do things properly. He gathered his thoughts for the conclusion. The humans have joined the Council's Historical Ethics Committee. Their first contribution? A new warning, now carved into the foundation of every council building. Patience is not weakness. Restraint is not surrender. And those who can afford to be kind have already proven they can afford to be cruel. A small chime indicated 5 minutes remaining. One final observation, for whatever species may find this record. Humanity's patience was not infinite, but their capacity for forgiveness seems to be. They remember everything, forgive most things, and remain eternally patient with those who learn from their mistakes, but they never, ever forget. The 1-minute warning sounded. This is Senior Diplomat Vaxos Par. Final testimony concluded. And to the humans who will inevitably review this record, thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your restraint. And most of all, thank you for giving us the chance to learn wisdom before you were forced to teach us fear. Vaxos squared his shoulders and walked toward the evacuation zone, leaving the council chambers to their scheduled meeting with human patience, finally, irrevocably run out. Behind him, Admiral Patel's voice began the countdown, still unfailingly polite. Demolition in 10, 9. Some said later that as the chambers fell, they heard children singing an old space song about a Major Tom. But that, Vaxos knew, was just humanity's patience, teaching one final lesson.